Hello and welcome to the Week 11 edition of the KAEP. I'm your host, John Gillespie, for your weekly podcast. Guys, we have one promise and one promise only, and that is to make you a much smarter fantasy football player, yet a much dumber person. We have lots to get into this week, guys. The quest for the cup, the playoff race is right in the thick of things. We'll break down the Week 11 matchups with plenty of fantasy playoff implications. Look ahead to Week 12, and as always, we will be handing out our weekly awards. But before we begin, let's give a shout out to our producer, Peter. Thanks, Peter, for all that you do and all the hard work you put in making this podcast possible for this one and for the quest for the cup. Peter, thank you so much. I'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsor, as you guys already know, Chicken Milk. Unleash the power of the chicken today with Chicken Milk, the #1 performance-enhancing supplement on the market. As I mentioned, guys, we have lots to get into, so let's dive right in to our game of the week, the Clash of the Titans, a possible Pudding Cup finale, maybe. This had lots of implications going into it. The battle for the #1 overall seed, possibly, and also much more in the mix. And this game did not let us down. It was thrilling till the end. It came down to that historic Monday night game. Congratulations to our defending champ, Juan Guzman Orange Crush, for squeaking out the victory, 162.5 to 157.6 over the Little Lamb. Juan, your top performer was none other than Drew Brees. 363 yards and 4 touchdowns to the tune of 30.5 fantasy points. Drew Brees is definitely having one of his best years of his historic Hall of Fame career, if you can believe that. It's been amazing for Drew Brees. Continue to start him each and every week. And for you, Ethan, your top performer is no one other than rolling with my homies, Patrick Mahomes, 478 yards and 6 touchdowns. This game was full of Patrick Mahomes' mistakes with the 2 fumbles, the 3 interceptions. Guys, in spite of that, he scored 35.9 fantasy points. He left at least 6 points on the table, so he could have broke 41 points and possibly could have won the game for Ethan Lopez. But that is for all for naught, but it was still a great game indeed. Guys, this game came down to the final interception by Patrick Mahomes and wasn't over until that point, with a thrilling game in real life and in the PVFL. With the victory, Orange Crush improves to 7-4, and with the loss, the Little Lamb falls to 7-4. Moving on to the next game on the tally, the Chief versus What's Cookin'. Congratulations to Pedro for pulling off the victory, 163.9 to 132.2. Pedro, your top performer was Tyreek the Streak Hill. Ridiculous game, 10 catches, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns to the tune of 43.5 fantasy points. Pedro has won 5 in a row and is peaking at the right time. And for you, Austin, your top performer was none other than Jared Goff, 413 yards and 5 total touchdowns to the tune of 35.1 fantasy points. I'm guessing a lot of our top performers this week will be from that historic Monday night game, guys. Just a heads up on that. With the victory, Pedro improves to 7-4, and with the loss, Austin Bennett falls to 6-5. Moving on to the next game on the tally, the Candyman versus TNNT. Congratulations to Ethan Taylor for pulling off the victory, 111.1 to 98.1. Ethan, your top performer was Devontae Adams, 10 catches on 166 yards to the tune of 26.6 fantasy points. And for you, Corbin, your top performer was the wrath of Quan himself, Saquon Barkley, 142 yards and 3 touchdowns to the tune of 35.2 fantasy points. With the victory, Ethan Taylor improves to 6-5, and with the loss, the Candyman falls to 6-5. Moving on to the next game on the tally, ASW versus the King of the North himself. Congratulations to Kirk Miley for pulling off the victory, 117.4 to 84.5. Kirk, your top performer, with Stephon Diggs. It's nice to see him back at full health. 13 catches, 126 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of 31.6 fantasy points. And for you, Riley, your top performer was Andrew Luck. 297 yards and 3 touchdowns to the tune of 23.9 fantasy points. With the victory, the King of the North improves to 4-7, and with the loss, Riley falls to 2-9. Moving on to the next game on the tally, battle for number 8, the final playoff spot, Dungeon Master versus Lady Laxire. Congratulations to J-Dub for pulling off the victory, 110.7 over 109.6. This game was another thriller on Monday night. J-Dub, your top performer, was none other than Russell Wilson, 225 yards and 2 touchdowns to the tune of 18.6 fantasy points. And for you, Kamala, your top performer was Zeke the Freak. 2 weeks in a row, he steps up, 122 yards and a touchdown to the tune of 33.1 fantasy points. With the victory, J-Dub improves to 6-5 and has clinched, as of today, is in the playoffs in the number 8 seed. And Kamala, you fall to 5-6 and are currently the number 9th. You're on the bubble with a couple games left. We'll get more into that in the quest for the cup. We're moving on to the final game on the tally, the Stafford Infection versus Lambeau Calrissian. Congratulations to Garrett for pulling off the victory, 148 to 118.9. Garrett, your top performer was that monster Travis Kelce, 10 catches, 127 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of 28.7 fantasy points. And for you, Lambeau Calrissian, your top performer was T.Y. Hilton, 9 catches, 155 yards, and 2 touchdowns to the tune of 36.5 fantasy points. With the victory, Garrett Ribel improves to 4-7, and with the loss, Lambeau Calrissian falls to 6-5. Alright everyone, that brings our Week 11 recap to a close. So let's move right into our weekly awards. Our start of the week goes to Pedro the Chief for starting Tyreek the Streak Hill, as I mentioned earlier. 10 catches, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. What a stud he really is. And our sit of the week goes to the North King Vikings for benching Josh Reynolds. 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of 20 fantasy points. So congratulations to you guys for earning our weekly awards. A look ahead to our Week 12. Only 2 games left, guys. So these 2 games are extremely important for our playoff implications and matchups. So do your homework and start accordingly. I think we have 4 games on this Thursday night. So guys, make sure your lineups are set by Thursday so you don't miss out on that. So that's it for this episode of The Cap, guys. I am your host, John Gillespie, and I will see you on the other side.